Hello and welcome to the Healthified Family Podcast. We're newly renamed to that from the Healthified Mother. We're all about healthified mothers, but we're also about healthified fathers and children. Hence, we've decided to rename this the Healthified Family Podcast. So, with the new year, we're going to call this episode 1 of the Healthified Family Podcast. Welcome. My name is Corey, and this is my lovely wife, Christy.
Hello.
So, Christy, today is just going to be we're going to get right into it. There's no real announcements. We're just kind of getting back into the swing of doing podcasting. And we, with the new year, want to talk about something that's fascinating. But like analogies and in the scriptures it's a very powerful way that Jesus uses to teach. And Christy and I have an analogy that we've kind of thought about and kind of put some time and thought into that we want to share with you. Kirsty's putting it into her book, but we kind of want to talk about it right now and just flesh out some more ideas around it. Kirsty, why don't you introduce what that analogy is?
So it's on the topic of faith over fear. And the analogy is that in life, we are meant to be master sailors, but we all just start out with like a little boat. We don't know how to use the sails. We don't know how to use the oars, the rudders. We don't know how to sail. So I guess we're like Moana in the movie. She's trying to teach herself how to sail, and we think we're doing pretty good. But then we
don't
see
think
other
people. We think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, if we don't sink, we think we're doing pretty good. But then we see other people passing us by, and we feel like that's not fair. Like, what? How come they're doing better than us? How come they have an oar? We didn't even think to look around. Maybe we have an oar, How come they have sails? How come they're going against the wind? This is like, what? The wind isn't in their favor, and yet they're sailing. And we don't recognize that we have all the same tools, all the same possibilities. We just have not taken advantage of them ourselves. And so there's kind of 3 stages. There's going with the flow, and then there's paddling upstream with one oar, and there's sailing. And we find ourselves, somewhere along that path in one of those three areas. And maybe in some areas of our lives, we are sailing past everybody. And in other areas of our lives, we're just going with the flow. We didn't even know we had an oar. And then I'm sure there are parts of our lives where we are paddling our little hearts out with one oar, kind of going in circles, not really getting very far, but trying, certainly trying. And I think the Lord wants us all to become master sailors and to be able to get where we want to go, and He wants to help us.
For me, I think of, the analogy we have here is kind of symbolizes the journey of a man or woman's life. Why does your life take certain turns that it does? Why do you end up at certain destinations? Why, what is it about the forces of nature, so to speak, and God's will? Like, how do they operate, and how do you operate in the field of God's will? Everyone else around you, their actions and occurrences, and how do you navigate this journey of your life in a way to skillfully get to places you want to go? And so to start, I like going with the flow. It's a simple way to think about it. you're alive. You don't have to try and do anything, and things are still going to happen, right? The people around you, they're going to make decisions, they're going to take actions that are going to affect you. And uh, if your father was a plumber, and you feel like, oh, I'm going to follow in my father's footsteps, or if your father is encouraging you to be a doctor, and this was most of my life. Like, if someone told me to do something, there was a high chance that I did it, in high school and beyond. And even when we got married, and it came to a career, someone said, oh, you should do this thing. And I was like, well, I just got married and I need something to do to provide for my family. Why don't I do that thing? He just said to do it. And I just went with the flow. And that's kind of, you know, just whatever opportunities are just thrown at you, essentially, you're just okay. And if no opportunities are thrown at you, then you're like, well, then no opportunities are here. I can't do anything about it. So
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times we just don't look around us and question. We don't ask questions, right? So we're just going with the flow because we see other people sailing by or paddling by, but we just assume, well, I wasn't given a paddle or I don't have a sail, so I guess I'm out of luck. Instead of asking, I wonder if I have an oar, or maybe I have a sail. And I wonder if I could find a teacher, a mentor, someone who would teach me how to use it, right? So we get stuck in this go with the flow because we just don't ask. And I love how in the scriptures, countless times, the Lord says, ask and it is given. Knock and ye shall find, or seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. It's so many times in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, in the scriptures, it just talks about asking, right? And then we can receive it. And we just don't think to ask.
yeah, yeah. Even going back into the beginning of this analogy, the way I envision it is just like, you know, a person is dropped out of the sky, and in their kayak, you know how sometimes you can see like people in kayaks, they they can go over waterfalls. Anyways, like getting dropped out of the sky in a kayak, and you land in the middle of the ocean, so to speak. And when you're going with the flow, whatever current the ocean has, wherever you got dropped, is going to take you to wherever it's going to take you. If it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, depending on where you were dropped, i.e., depending on what placement you had in life, what your family circumstances looked like, the luck of the draw, so to speak, is going to determine drifting in the currents. Are you going to end up on the west coast of America, on Hawaii, in Japan, Malaysia, like wherever, like, or some other random island? It just depends on where you were dropped, because you are letting the current of your surroundings just take you with them. If you were born to a poor family, and your dad was a poor laborer, and you're like, well, I guess that's my destiny, is to I'm going to follow in my father's footsteps, and just do what is kind of expected of someone in my station in life.
Yeah. Well, and even there, it's like going with the flow is accepting stations, accepting class distinctions, accepting that I can't be any different. I was just born this way. Like you said, I was handed bad deck of cards.
Good or bad,
uh,
right? It's the luck of the
yeah,
draw.
so this is just how it is for me, without questioning, without thinking, uh what if I want to change that? right?
Mm-hmm. So
And
and then
even in countries like India where they still kind of have a caste system, um, you can change that. You could come to America. Like nobody cares about your caste here, right?
mm-hmm.
And it really just depends on your choices if you even, recognize that I have choices.
Yeah, and you have these societally imposed positions like a caste, or like, whatever income level your family has been at, or the color of your skin, or the community you were born into. All these potential limitations that are placed on you just by the nature of, like, what family and where were you located in, and what was their socioeconomic status and so forth. And going with the flow is just accepting all that is like law. Like, well, I have to go with the flow. I mean, even if you don't, people don't think of it like that, it seems like it's an unbreakable current. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. It's the framework of your life. You're in this current and you're just letting it take you, you know. Not that people aren't taking actions, right? People go to work and people do provide for themselves, but in the aspect of the framework of the story and journey of their life and its direction, they're just, whatever's given to them, they're just letting what others have given to them decide where they're going to be headed tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to say about the going with the flow?
No, yeah, that covers that part.
So the next, paddling upstream, and I just think of it, because originally when we were talking about it, there's both the mix between the river analogy and like the ocean analogy, and I just think of it as like going against the stream, going against the current. Because if someone's in the ocean or on a river, if you have a paddle, you can go against the current.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
Well, so with that idea, it's like you recognize, hey, I have choices. Hey, I can make a difference in where I'm headed, in what I'm doing. And so you start taking actions. Um, you might put a lot of forethought into it. You might not. You're just paddling hard. You're working 3 jobs trying to save, get ahead, whatever it is, right? Um, you are probably reading some self-help books, or taking some kind of courses or classes, or going to college, or doing something uh, to try to make a difference in your life, right? So you recognize, hey, my actions have consequences, good or bad, and I'm going to try, my hardest to make them good. And that's a great step up from going with the flow, right? Um, and when you're stuck in that, in trying to make things happen, um, you you can forget about God, because you feel like your actions are what's making things happen. You're the one in charge of your life. You're the one that's you take credit for all the successes. Well, that's because I've been working so hard. Yeah, it's all me, right? Of course, when things don't go well, that was somebody else's fault, not my fault. Maybe God's trying to curse me or teach me something. Um, but yeah, it's it's not everyone who gets into that mindset, but it's a very easy place to get into that mindset, to think it's all me, for good or for bad, forgetting to allow Jesus as our Savior, forgetting to allow for the atonement, forgetting to allow for others to help and serve and whatever. It's, you know, it's me, and it depends on, you know, everything in life depends on me, right? So it's kind of a lonely place to be.
There is so much good that in this though. Like I like in my mind, on one level, you know what has been inculcated culturally into us as Americans from the time I was a kid, right? Is you can go to college and you can become anything. You can become an astronaut. You
Mm-hmm.
can become a doctor, a
The President
scientist,
of
an
the United
engineer,
States.
president of the United States. If you go to college and then you start yourself on this complete like that was the dream of college, right? Like doesn't matter what socioeconomic class your parents were in, if you can get into college, you can become anything. And through hard work, learning, you make it through college through a lot of work studying and so forth, and you can get started in a career and you can work your way. And so like going to college, picking out like become deciding to become a doctor and then working like that in my mind is taking the paddle to your life and picking a new path that the current that you're in isn't headed towards doctor results. But you grab a hold of a paddle, you go to college and you get on that path and you start paddling towards doctor land, the life of a doctor. And you weren't going to get there otherwise. And that's the American, has been the American dream, so to speak, of how come college has been preached, because it gives you a paddle and an ability to become anything, so to speak. Not that college is necessary, right? Because there's people that become doctors and lawyers that, like Abraham Lincoln. I don't think he didn't go to college, I think, right? So there's been famous people, I don't know if that didn't take the college route and still became a professional in a field. Let alone there's people who have become successful entrepreneurs who didn't finish college and didn't even finish high school,
Bill
but
Gates didn't
finished
go to
college.
college.
But
Yeah.
essentially, if they're preaching like, well, it was because of all the hard work that I put in and all the hard work, like they're basically preaching like take this paddle and paddle, paddle, paddle. That's what's going to take you to success. And it does work. It has worked. It can change people's lives. It's totally a valid, but like you said, it has its drawbacks. And one is that people feel like it was all me.
Mm-hmm.
They can fall into that place of lacking humility.
Yeah. And there's
Pride.
also another drawback is that it doesn't matter how hard you paddle. If you have one oar and you are paddling your heart out, you don't have enough energy and manpower and whatever to compete with the sailing, right? With a rudder and a sail and wind power, etc. And so you're always looking and seeing that somebody else is ahead of you. You know, oh man, it doesn't matter. And so there's sort of this like feeling of like defeat. Like I worked so hard and I'm still not able to get where I really want to be. And 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 that's good because it brings you to a realization that I need somebody else, right? I can't do this on my own.
Well, yeah, like there are limitations to your own power. Like when you're paddling, there's only so fast you can go. I mean, your muscles can get bigger. There's only so much you can do with your skills, even if you're maximizing your skills at whatever you're trying to accomplish. Your doctor skills or whatever. Like there's thresholds. of accomplishment that you're going to hit just relying on your own self.
Right. Yeah.
And there, if you never get out away from like, hey, there are forces outside of me that can help me go faster and farther. Like
Right.
that's a step beyond, um, a step beyond just relying on yourself. So it like using a paddle, you don't have to trust anyone. Like you can just trust yourself, but it has its limitations, its drawbacks. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and then next we have sailing, transitioning into sailing. So, why do you think in this analogy, let's give a definition. What do you think the oar is? What do you think these things represent? I mean, in my mind, the current, the water under you, the current just kind of represents society, the people around you, the culture that you're in, right? And you're just your immediate surroundings and where everyone else is headed, and their perceptions of you and for you, when people have expectations of you and what you're going to be and become, like your family, and that just kind of creates a current for your life. And then the paddle, in my mind, is decisions and actions you take that just decisions and actions you take, that alter your course, or even if you're happy with the current you're in, speed you up on that path and accelerate you in that the where the current is headed and taking you. And then but the oar, or oars, if you have two of them, can transition, right, can become a rudder. So the same actions and decisions, you can just kind of set them in the water.
If done consistently, right? The same actions and decisions, if done consistently,
You
become
got to keep your oar in
a
the water.
rudder.
You got to keep the rudder in the water, right? Because if you take it out of the water, it becomes useless. Yeah, so consistent actions and, yeah, decisions. But then the sail, I think of that as being your faith, your belief. And then what did we have the wind as representing?
So I'm just going to read this part. When a mentor enters your life, they guide you in using sails and a rudder. Initially, you make mistakes, sailing off course at a breaknecking pace and feeling humbled as you limp back. But with patience and guidance, you grasp the art of sailing. You realize that by skillfully manipulating the sails and the rudder, you can navigate smoothly, regardless of the wind's direction. It becomes apparent that sailing is not about luck. It's about aligning your efforts with the elements. As you work with the wind, aligning your sails to its powerful gusts, you go zipping across the water farther and faster than you have ever dreamed possible. You are humbled by the love, patience, and compassion of the mentor or mentors who taught you how to sail. You soon begin to share what you have learned with others. You get mixed responses. Some people think you are just trying to show off. Some people think you are ignorant, rude, stuck up, and have ulterior motives. Some may misunderstand your newfound wisdom, misinterpreting it for arrogance or ignorance. Yet you continue, and some begin to follow your path, trading their paddles for sails and a rudder. This metaphor mirrors the different approaches we can take in life, especially in relation to faith and God's will. We can go with the flow, allowing life to happen without seeking guidance, or we can strive to paddle upstream with one oar, believing that our efforts should be enough. However, the most rewarding path is to align our will, represented by the sails, with God's will, represented by the wind. It is not God's will for us to suffer or toil needlessly. He has shown us a higher path, one that involves seeking His guidance and aligning our will with His. We need to put in intelligent effort, but also surrender to the forces beyond our control. Like a car that needs to be in motion for its steering to be effective, if we get in, start the engine, and begin driving, seeking, praying, and expecting His guidance, it doesn't matter if we're going in the exact opposite direction. He can help us to get turned around. But if we just sit there, asking Him to show us which way to go, demanding a roadmap before we start our engine, we are not exercising true faith. For faith is believing, and believing is seeing. If we try to see first and then believe so we can use our faith, we are mixing up our formula.
Right. Okay. And so this analogy really kind of, in essence, represents an evolution of culture and society as a whole, civilization, but also the evolution of each person, right? In ancient times, so to speak, some cultures didn't have the ability to get on the water and get in a boat and go to new different places and destinations, and some people did. They learned, and what was the natural thing to do? They figured out how to paddle. They didn't even know about sailing or that it was a possibility, and then someone discovered the ability to like put up this sheet and like you capture the wind in a way, and learned how to sail, and then people progressed and learned how to become master sailors to literally nearly be able to sail against the wind and get to destinations consistently and quicker than ever before with huger, larger amounts of cargo and so forth. So yeah, and I love the thought where it's all about becoming a master sailor, like you said in the beginning. For us to have a destination in mind, that it doesn't matter where we started or where we are, what the current is doing, or even the wind, with skills, certain skills and actions that are almost, in some way, it does take effort, but becomes effortless when the wind, when you set everything up right and the wind like fills the sail, it seems like it's effortless to go in that direction. And you know, I also think of the wind as being, the unseen forces in the world. Some people have actions happen to them, and oh man, this terrible thing happened to me. Must, like, the devil, like Job, like, oh, the devil must be really working on me now. Or some people have this great thing happen and like, oh man, God must be smiling down upon me now. So like there's everyone kind of almost assumes like there's unseen forces at work. And what we've been learning is like there's a way to harness these unseen forces, to no matter what, even if it is the devil trying to work against you, you can take that force and use it for your good. The law of polarity that Leslie talks about, like, doesn't matter anything that happens to you, you can turn it to be for your good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about how, we have the ability to ask and seek for deeper understanding. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? And when we put up a sail, if we look like we don't know what we're doing out on the water with a sail, someone's going to come along and be like, you know what, let me show you how to use that. And if we're ready, we'll receive that. Okay.
Well, let alone
They
some
can
people
see we're
might mock you and
trying.
be like, some people might mock you and be like, "You're trying to sail. You're ridiculous, dude." And they're sitting there with their paddle, and like,
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's
or
going
they
to be the mockers.
detractors. Like the people with
And
the paddles be like getting ahead of you. If you don't know how to use a sail right, like the people with paddles are getting ahead of you. And they're like, "Dude,
yeah,
what are you doing?" Or the people without a paddle, and they're like, "What are you doing? You're gonna sink your boat with trying to sail. Just go with the flow. You
right.
never sink. It's just taking you. You just why try? What are you trying to do?"
hmm And yet, those who have learned to sail, they see, hey, this guy's ready, and they are willing to share what they've learned. And as they teach you and you follow their mentorship and their guidance, you progress. And it's slow going at first, and yeah, some of those paddlers might be ahead of you and thinking, wow, can't believe he's so crazy to get into this kind of stuff when he could be ahead like I am if he just put some more effort into it, right? If he just paddled a little harder. He thinks he can take the easy way out. He's going to try one of those sails, and it could be that way for a little while, maybe a couple years, maybe 5, 10 years as you are learning to sail. But at some point, you can never out row a sailboat, right? Like the potential, with one oar, one guy in a boat, he's never going to be able to outdo it.
Even
Once he
well,
gets
because
the hang of it, right?
I think the analogy even works if like you get together and let's say you build a company and you have a group of people and they're committed to a goal and you're all trying to accomplish a goal together or whatever, and you're all rowing together towards the same destination. There's still only so fast that you can go under your own power.
Right.
If nobody on the boat, let alone the leader of the organization, ever learns to, hey, let's put up a sail.
Right. Yeah.
Like in E-Myth, I think of like a technician builds teams of a technician and manager. They build teams of people to row together. And the problem with that is you get tired and you get burnt out. And oftentimes you didn't make it to your destination yet before you're all too tired to keep going. And then people start jumping off boat. And then even the leader that was just a technician or manager might be like, Joe is interviewed with a guy who has his own business doing countertop manufacture. And he's like interviewing Joe for a potential hire to hire him. And he's sitting there telling Joe, I don't know if I want to continue in this business. He's got like 5 or 6 employees, thinking about bringing on another one. He claimed he, is like, he's between, I want to double the size of my company or I just want to quit. Because he's been rowing and rowing and rowing, and he's, going as fast and as far as he can, and he's getting tired.
Yeah. Yeah. And for anybody in that situation, what it's going to take is they're going to have to at some point put up a sail or they go under. And that's why in that book E-Myth, they talk about how many businesses go under, within the first 2 years, and then within the first 5 years, and then within the first 10 years. And if you make it past 10 years, it's because you figured out how to put up a sail. And otherwise, you can't. Even if your business is growing and doubling and you're opening new franchises here and there, at some point, you can no longer keep up with the demand. There's only so much of your time, and you have to create a system. You have to have the consistency of a rudder, and you have to have, the
sail's got to be consistently up and in the
right.
right direction.
And you have to be aligning it with the wind
Constantly every day. Yeah. Aligning yourself.
And otherwise, you can have your whole rowing team, but like you said, pretty soon they're like, I am too tired, and that destination is really far away still. And I'm done. I'm going to find someone else. Like, look, that guy, he looks like he's a better employer. He's not pushing me so hard. Whatever it is, right? They're just done. They're not, even if they were invested at first, they recognize at some point, I can't get to my destination or my dream from this rowboat. I've got to do something different. Even if they're not sure what that is, they recognize I'm not going to hit my goals and dreams.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of the sail is not just faith, but hope, and in my mind, there's a distinction between hope and how do you phrase it? Just wish,
Wishful thinking.
wishful thinking. Like I like in wishful thinking, someone takes a tissue or a cloth that might be a sail, and they just throw it up in the air. Like, what happens? It just falls to the ground, or the wind takes it and blows it away. And so then, oh, you take that, throw it to the wind, and your wishful thinking just either falls back down because there's no wind to carry it, or it just gets blown away and now it's gone. Whereas hope has anchors, and maybe anchors, it's anchored by faith
Right.
in solid things.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've most people have probably heard the analogy of the little boy who's flying a kite with his dad. And he's so sad, and he tells his dad, "We need to cut the string so the kite can go higher and reach, its true potential." And his dad tells him, "You can't cut the string, son." And he cuts the string, and the kite just plunges to the earth. And he's like, "What? What happened?" That anchor, that string, is what allows the kite to fly. And sometimes we think, "I don't need this, it's holding me back, it's keeping me from my true potential." But that hope really does anchor us and keep us in a place where we're able to rotate the sails in a direction that's helpful. And if it's just the wishful thinking, it's like cutting that string. Well, we got a sail, let's just figure out, see where it takes us, without the hope that it's actually going to take us somewhere. It's just kind of, well, I mean, I think that's what sails do, right? Take you somewhere, let's try it. So not
And
as
then
deep of a faith.
you can either, people do it all the time. They have wishful thinking. Someone in that's going with the flow, not putting their paddle in the water, throws up their wishful thoughts, and they're like, they don't ever go anywhere. They're useless. Like, I've tried that sailing thing. I mean, I put a sail up. It's like, how did you do it? There's a method to doing it correctly, and and maybe they built a rickety sail with and maybe the mast they built wasn't, and they just got blown over. There is a skill. Like, what is the mast? I'm trying to think of what the mast might be, but maybe the mast would be the anchor of faith.
Yeah. Yeah, so my invitation to the listeners is, take a good look at your life, and where are you? And there's no judgment from us of where you're at, because we've been in lots of different places and
We're
stepped
still
up
trying to
and
become
stepped
master
down,
sailors.
and
Not there yet.
I'm sure there are people laughing at us. Wait, what are you doing putting that sail up? That doesn't even make sense. We're paddling a lot faster than you, dude. You really ought to try this paddling thing, but where is your dream, and are you headed in that direction? And are you going to get there in the way that your chosen method? If you're in the go with the flow, are you going to get to your dream? If you're paddling, are you going to get to your dream before you're too exhausted? Or are you learning to put up a sail and trust God and trust that He's going to take you there and help send others to show you the way and help you get there?
Yeah, the thing about going with the flow, you know, sometimes a storm comes and doesn't matter what, like, because the ocean currents are pretty constant, but then sometimes a storm will come and the winds blow, and it'll blow you wherever the wind's taking you, and it'll take you, you know, wherever. And so the some people literally think, well, it's not up to me where I end up. I can't control the wind. I can't control the waves and the ocean. Where I am and where I ended up are outside of my control. and they justify themselves, or just life is unfair. Like the only way for me to get rich, the only way for me to become wealthy is if the wind blows me there, or if the ocean happens to take me on that course, which you know unfortunately the ocean currents don't take anyone to wealth.
Right.
uh the where society takes you is just where everybody else is already, where 95% of people are already going.
Yeah.
But the
And
only
they
way to become
literally,
wealthy is if a storm comes and pushes me off course, and all of a sudden
yeah.
I magically win the lottery.
Yes. They literally think that they're most likely to be wealthy by winning the lottery because
That's
they
the only
can't
chance they have.
foresee any other way to get wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're going with the flow, they're right. They're just as likely to get wealthy as to get rich,
Because
in
I mean,
as
it,
to win
it
the
does
lottery.
it does happen, but you're more likely to get struck by lightning in Florida 2 or 3 times before you win the lottery.
Right. And so,
Like that's the
yeah.
statistic. Like that's the real statistic about how unlikely it is. Like people get struck by lightning in Florida more than any other state, and yet still you probably have to get struck by lightning 2 or 3 times. Before your luck will kick in and you'll win the lottery.
Right. And if we, are banking on Publishers Clearinghouse, or some kind of um,
Yeah.
miraculous, magical, lucky thing, right? Um, you know, and to use the word miracles, miracles aren't luck. Miracles are scientific. God is using scientific principles that we don't understand yet, but they are not magic. They are not luck. And, people are like, well, I'm just waiting for a miracle. But when we are actually really waiting for a miracle is when we understand the principles that every blessing that we receive is predicated on obedience to a law. And when we are living those laws and we have done, what we can, and the Lord comes in and fills in the rest, that's a miracle. It's not dumb luck. It's not the lottery. It's a miracle. And I think
So I
that's
think
where
I
people
think
get kind of confused, is like miracles just happen. God just says, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I choose you for a miracle. Like that is just not how it works. Miracles are much more premeditated than that.
well, I just think there's a way to harness these unseen forces for our benefit.
Yeah.
They're there as a force of nature, so to speak. Like you can liken it to the wind. There's these unseen forces, angelic help, so to speak, that are available for us to benefit from if we understand the laws and principles upon which that aid, that unseen help is based upon, accessing it. And I
Yeah.
think that, that's Leslie Householder's books are like a summary of like, here's a, she, the way I think of it is she's written a guidebook about how to become a master sailor in your mindset.
Yeah, for sure. And, when the more success you have in life, the more you believe in angels. And I think that's interesting because you hear people in very successful places in life, and they are not afraid to admit, yeah, I had help, unseen help, angelic help, miracles, etc. And when you're in that go with the flow, you're kind of hesitant to give God the credit, because if you give God the credit for the good, you have to give him credit for the bad, and that seems not right, because God, there can't be a God if he let this bad thing happen to me and all of that mindset, right?
Right. So I think that's a good summary of our analogy of sailing. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, the last part here. I believe we were born with an innate sense of our life's purpose and mission. Our heavenly parents, in their wisdom, sat down with us and helped us design a course that would bring us the most joy. While they knew better, they respected our agency and allowed us to make detours and learn along the way. As we begin to move, we will be guided by angels and intuition, piecing together our life's purpose and mission. I believe God wants for us what we want. Sometimes it may not be the best thing for us, but it will give us experience, and God knows that. Does He punish us for our mistakes? Does He try to teach us a lesson when we sin? Are the consequences of sin and mistakes placed upon us by a vengeful God? Or are they simply the natural results of our consequences and the choices of those around us? Ultimately, God desires for us to thrive and to use our faith as a guiding rudder, not toilsome paddles. He wants us to sail smoothly and swiftly towards our dreams, aligning our will with His. Consequences are not punishments, but the natural outcomes of our choices and the choices of those around us. This path requires effort and faith, but it is a journey of joy, not suffering. And I really do believe that God wants us to succeed. He wants us to find joy and happiness. Sometimes when you're on one of those other paths, it feels like, gosh, I can't get ahead. I keep getting knocked down in life. God just wants me to suffer. And I truly believe that He does not. It's our lack of perspective. It's our lack of understanding, of experience, not able to see that God has no desire to punish us and to make us suffer. He allows those things to happen because of our choices, but He's so happy when we put up a sail. He's so happy to fill it with wind and to see us succeed. And then He tells us, when you succeed, when you are converted, help your brother. Help someone else. So, yeah, those are my thoughts.
All right. Well, that concludes our first episode of the Healthified family. And I think it's an apt place to start the year because the analogy is all about, part of the analogy is picking a destination, because otherwise, why learn to sail if you don't care where life takes you and you going with the flow is good enough? If you have another destination in mind, learning to become a master sailor sounds like the ideal way to go. So, love it.